Pardon? I'll get to that in a sec. I'm just hoping this doesn't fall down. Let's see how we go. Okay, can you guys see past that? Yep, move if you need to. Okay, so as I said, we have looked at perimeter of shapes with unknown sides yesterday, and today we're going to move on to area. Now we did a bit of area yesterday, okay, we talked about the formula for area of a what shape? Oops.
No.
Rectangle.
Thank you, Karen. Okay, so area equals length times width. Great. Now that's for a rectangle. Okay, sometimes you might see it written this way. Now with algebra, okay, if it is a multiplication, sometimes, because that's the most common thing with beginning algebra, they leave out the multiplication. So it means the same thing. And when you do get to do algebra later on in grade 7 and so on, if there's two letters next to each other, it means one times the other. Same as if it was 2x, for example, 2 times x. Okay, anyway, just in case you do see it this way. Right, so we're actually not going to find, well, we are going to find the perimeter just as a practice, but the question I'm going to ask you is, what is the area of these two shapes? Okay, so firstly, what do we need to do before we do any of that? If you have a look closely at the diagrams, the pictures, Dave?
I'll find out the missing
lengths, great, okay. So what we did the other day was we talked about the matching sides, okay? So these ones here match the total length on this side. This is 3, this is 2, so this is 1 centimetre, this one, great, okay? And then here we've got 7, 4 plus what? 3, awesome. Okay, just while we're on that train of thought, let's do it with the second shape. Okay, so we've got 4, 1, 1, 2. Cool. Now we've got something here. We've got 2, 2, 3. 7.
Yay!
Great. Okay, let's find the perimeter.
What do we tell you?
Oh, okay.
Let me rephrase that. Find the perimeter.
Oh, no.
That's
20.
Pardon?
I got 22 centimeters.
22. Agreed?
I got 180.
I got 10 tallies.
Wait. What was it? Sorry? 22. Justin.
10 tallies.
I've got
20. I'm sorry.
20.
Justin. Okay, calm the fun. Okay, perimeter of the second one.
No, miss the 22.
And
The first one.
it's 20. The second one. We need smarter.
Dusty, stop trying to make me make mistakes.
Yeah, but
20 centimeters. Okay.
But you shouldn't
The
rely
second one's 22.
Okay.
You should rely on someone else to get the right.
I shouldn't rely on Dusty, that's for sure. Okay, second one, perimeter.
22.
All wrong. 22 centimeters.
22 centimeters.
I don't know. I mean, it's not.
Agreed?
Thank you, Professor Max.
220
Alright, cool. Now,
Thanks,
guys. Moving on to finding the area. Now, if this was a rectangle or a square, it would be relatively easy. Remembering that area equals length times width. But this is not neither of these are regular shapes. Okay? So there is 2 different ways you could do this question. Have a think about how you could find the area of the inside of this shape. 2 different methods, both of which are fine to use. And sometimes, depending on the shape, one is easier than the other. Okay, have a think about it. How could you find the area of the inside of this shape? With a couple of steps. Bailey.
You could, well, you could do the width and then plus it and then do 1 length times width and then plus it and do the other one.
On the right track. I think you know what it is, not quite explaining it. Yep.
What you could do is 3 times 7, if that would work if it was a rectangle. And then what else you could do is you could do the imagined area of that one there. So for example, 1 times 3 centimeters on the edge there. And minus that from the answer, which was 21, and
Right.
you get 18 centimeters.
Fantastic. All right, that is method number 1.
Wouldn't you half the perimeter?
Okay, so you could find the total rectangle area. Write this down, please, guys. Find the total rectangle area and then subtract a smaller section. So write that down just like I have here, please. So in this case, it would be, e.g., 7 times 3 equals 21. Subtract 1 times 3, which is the smaller rectangle. Which equals 18 centimeters
Square.
Good. So we're area, we're dealing with 2 dimensions.
See, but is that the right
Area.
Is it?
Yep. There is another way. I think I heard someone mention a little bit of it just before. No.
Would you like pretend that little other section of the rectangle? Imagine there's a line down there, and then you
Come and draw what you mean. What line? Come draw it. I think I know. I think you're on the right track. And then do what?
And then you do this. And then you add the extra measure. And then you do this. But you have to do the other.
So what Cooper has suggested is to divide the shape into 2 smaller rectangles or squares, whatever they end up being, and find the area and then add them together.
So would
Okay.
they be? So would that airline, the one that Cooper just drew, would that be 3 centimeters?
Let's talk about that. So the difficult thing with that concept is ensuring that you choose the right length. Okay? So for you to find this area here, you would need to use which measurements?
3 and 4.
Right, 3 and 4. If you use 7 and 3, then that would be incorrect because this is not 7, this is 4. Okay, got that? So the way that I would suggest you do this, if the shape is large enough on the page, is to do it within the rectangle. So A equals 3 times 4, which is
12.
12 what?
Centimeters.
Okay, now this would be 3 times 2, yeah? Okay, and then take your working outside the square or rectangle, so 12 plus 6 equals 18 centimeters squared. And if you were really clever in an exam, for example, you would do it one way, and if you had time, you could then do it the other way, and you would need to have the same answer to get it correct. It would be highly unlucky if you got the wrong answer twice and then got it wrong. So you would most likely get a different answer if you were making a mistake, in which case you could go back and find out what you did wrong. But hopefully you wouldn't get the same wrong answer twice. That would be pretty unlucky. Okay, now another thing you could think about is you could actually divide it here instead and have this as a rectangle and this little section too. That's also perfectly fine. Same thinking process. Yes, babe?
What? Then why is this 7 then? 7 centimeters.
This is this entire length here.
Yeah, but wouldn't you need it to work the area?
If you found this area stops here. And so that length there is 4.
Oh.
This length here is all the way along. If you divided it here, Bailey, and you had a little rectangle here and this one, you would use the 7 and the 2.
Yeah.
And then the 1 and the 4.
Oh, okay.
So that's the only thing you've got to be really careful of, is making sure you select the right length. combination. Okay? So, knowing those two methods, I want you to do them both for this shape, which is a little bit trickier because you're probably going to need to divide it into 3 and then or 1, 2, 3. Okay? So have a go, just a sec. Have a go at doing it for that shape and then we'll check it in a second. Both methods, please. Start with the method you're most comfortable with. Question quickly?
Why can't we just like push the corners out to make it a full rectangle? And wouldn't the answer be 21 for the first one since you push it out? Because 3 plus 4 equals 7 and then 1 plus 2 equals 2.
If you were to push this out, yeah, you would find the area, which is what we did here. But the shape is this shape, so you would need to subtract that, not find the area of what it would be if you changed it. Yes.
What would the perimeter or be the same as well?
The perimeter would be
The same, and then the area would be the same.
area and perimeter would probably not be the same. Not very often are they the same measurement.
So for the second one, we're going to use the answer.
Sorry, I wasn't going to do
No,
it.
as in like the same measurement, but they'll be the same answer if we didn't do that. If we worked it out the other way, they'll be the same.
Probably, but I don't think it would be correct. Yeah. Okay, let's have a go. Alright, so let's have a go. Thanks, guys. Charlie. Thanks. Alright, hands up if you were able to divide it up into 3 different rectangles and find it that way. Okay, so let's start with that. So you could have either divided it up this way and had 1, 2, 3, but I saw most people do it this way, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay,
Miss,
either way would be fine.
what I ended up doing was the lower thing, and I used the first strategy on the bit at the top.
Oh yeah, okay. It's a combination of both.
Yeah.
Alright, cool. So we've got area of this one equals what times what? Centimeters squared. Cool. Now this little one was a little bit tricky to get the right measurements. So we had the 2 here. And this was actually 1 to this point and then 2.
Yeah.
So you needed to get that correct. So we had 3 actually as this length. So area equals 2 times 3 equals 6 centimeters squared, and then 3 times 2. Okay, so we had 8 plus 6 plus 6 equals 20 centimeters squared. Okay, so now we've got a base for finding out the other way if we had time in a test, for example. I'll just do it in a different colour. It's getting pretty confusing. Rightio. So you could find the entire area. Did anyone do it this way? Okay, alright. It is, and like I said before, guys, like I said before, some methods work with some shapes better.
Yeah, I did.
Okay. So let's do it over here. So we've got area equals the whole thing. How do we do that? I guess it wasn't an actual fart, just for the record. That was your chair, definitely. Okay, refocus. Well, let's practice. But how do we find the entire area if this was one big rectangle?
Add it up.
No, you don't add to find the area. Add what?
The length times width.
So you times
But
it,
you have to
yeah?
make it a
Right. So the length times width would be what measurements?
4 centimeters.
Yep.
4 times 7.
4 times what, Adriano?
7.
7, which is?
28. 20 is big.
Centimeters. Cool. And then I would need to subtract 2 little mini rectangles, yeah? So if I had made this shape a big rectangle, okay, then I would need to subtract 1 times 2, which is 2.
And then you raise the 1 by 1.
And then, yep, 2 times 3.
Yeah, I said 3.
Gurney, please be quiet. Thank you. Now I got the 28 from finding the entire measurement of 4 times 7. Yep. Subtract this little one and this little one. Did I get the same answer?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, in an exam or in your working, they don't. You don't need to use both methods. Okay. So you might choose to just be familiar and confident with one because it will almost always work with the shapes. But if you want to choose 2 to be confident with, that might actually save you some time if you select the right one in an exam, for example. Or if you find one is confusing with the measurements given. Okay?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So the questions for these are 5E, page 176. Alright, 5E, page 176.
I actually named him.